Hey guys, it's Rezael back with Cafe Vanguard Deck Profile, so hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and subscribe. This time we're covering DZ Set 5 for Keter Sanctuary. Yes, we are having 5 Keter decks in a row. That's not intentional. I swear it just happened on its own, but thankfully we're going to knock them all out the way at once, and that would be Rezael. So there are 2 Rezael decks. Today we are covering Fate and Miracles. The one I'll be covering tomorrow will be True Miracles. There is a very important difference with the 2 decks, and I'll save those differences for True Miracles. But for now, let's go ahead and get this started, shall we, and see what we got, because honestly, with the new Rezael Vita, even though he is just like a direct upgrade of Rezael, it feels kind of underwhelming because you would expect a little bit more from the evolved form of the main character card. But hey, you know what, it is what it is, and the deck does still work really well with itself. So let's get this started, shall we, see what we got. First of today, we have our energy generator. It's our ride deck crest. You want to have ride deck crest in your ride deck. Auto ride deck, when you ride, put this card into your crest zone. If you want second energy charge 3, continuously you may have to have 10 energies. That'll be auto beginning for ride phase. Energy charge 3, then act once per turn. Energy bot 7, draw a card. Alright, pretty solid. You get a 3 for energy every turn. If you want second, you get an extra 3 on top of that. And if you end up energy blasting 7 because maybe you didn't see a lot of your main energy blasters throughout the game, you can end up just drawing a card which can help you draw into your very important pieces. All around, the energy generator is a nice card to have, and this is kind of the reason why I really love this deck, because the deck plays around with the energy gimmick so much to where you have to be so aware of where you're going to drop your energy at for your skills and be a little bit consistent with the costing. So I like having this as the ride deck crest. Moving on, we have our starter in Wings of Aspiration Soul. Grade 0 boost, 5k show, 6k base, auto run power if I can draw a card, standard starter, no special for you draw if you go second. You can make this any starter you want. None of the ride line requires this as the starter, but I like 2 Soul because A, he is a part of Rezael's actual ride line, but B, I just love Soul as a card. Like, he has angel wings, and I don't know, I always feel like when I look at Soul, I see part of myself in him, so you know, I like having him as one of them in the ride deck. Moving on, we have our Overtrigger and Light Dragon Deity of Honors Armatinoa. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Overtrigger, remember Overtrigger in your deck. When revealed as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one to use. It gets plus minimum for the turn. And revealed it during a jet check, activate its addition effect, which you get to, until end of turn, perform jet checks with battle as your rear guard attack. Arm pretty solid because the deck can spawn out a board like crazy a lot of the times, and it can aggro down your opponent really well. And if you don't have Gabwelius on your board over here, you can end up doing a lot of rear guard drive checks with this deck and possibly see a lot of grade 3s to get sextuple drive out of it. R1 Armatinoa makes for a very solid Overtrigger, though it can kind of screw you over, so some people like to run Valna for more consistent multi-attacking, or Spoiler for recycling, or even the Dark Overtrigger for calling and healing, but I like to run the Nation Overtrigger, so therefore we are with Armatinoa. And Armatinoa, I don't know why, this is the one deck Armatinoa likes me, and okay, outside of Hexa, but to be fair, I stack it in Hexa because that's how Hexa works, but this is the one deck where Armatinoa seems to show up in consistently the most without me having to interfere with it that much, so one of Armatinoa. Moving on to our normal triggers, we have 3 copies of Protection Magic Pro OB. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k power, draw 2 guard circle, opponent's vanguard to grade 3 guard at 5,000 shield, 10k shield. It's a draw trigger, so it helps increase the hand, and it is an extra guard power, which is nice to have, especially when you are me and apparently will consistently draw 5 grade 3s before either player rides to grade 1. I wish I was joking. I'm being legit serious. This deck has 9 grade 3s. About the same amount all my other decks have as grade 3s. And for some reason, this is the only deck that has consistently drawn 5 grade 3s in its opening hand. Don't ask me why, it just does it. 3 of Proby, so that doesn't happen. Or at least if it happens, I have guard power. Then we have a total of 8 crits, 4 copies of Chevalmia, grade 0 boost, 50k show, 5k power. You can run any crit you want here. I choose to make it Chevalmia because it was Sarvalso's trigger, aka the DZ set start boss, and those bosses' triggers and starter units were technically supposed to be the canonical Faded One triggers, and here's Chevalmia for, you know, Rezael. But then we have 4 copies of Blade Feather Drag, grade 0 boost, 50k show, 4k power. While you can run Chevalmia or any other crit, I definitely recommend 4 copies of Blade Feather because it has auto rear guard. At the end of the boost to shove it to soul, choose them, you get 2 for the turn. Okay. You might run into a soul problem with this deck, and by might, I mean you won't unless like you are hard ramming every card that has a soul blast skill, but if you are in this situation, Blade Feather is a nice way to help increase your soul, and because it's a crit, you can just soul blast it out and then use it for divine skills. So we have a total of 8 crit for that additional pressure, and then we have 4 heals and Bringer of Distant Sounds, Uranus. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power, standard heal, nothing about it. You can really run any heal you want. Again, just like with Chevalmia, this was the trigger for Sarvalso, therefore it became the trigger for Rezael over here, but again, you can make this any heal you want. You can make the kind of heals, but I'd rather have the consistent 15k shield of the normal heals than the fluctuating 10-25k shield of the kind of heals, but again, you do you. Moving on to our grade 1s, 2 copies of Reflective Dragon. This card is a choice if you want to run it. If you don't want to run Reflective Dragon, I definitely recommend in place of it Gabwelius, the card that, like, when placed by card abilities, gives someone plus 10k, and then it has Intercept if your Vanguard's a Rezael. I meant to put that card in the deck, and then I just liked Reflective Dragon more, but if you want to run that over Reflective Dragon, I completely understand. Grade 1 boost, Vita Shield, AK base, auto and back or rearguard circle. When your other units placed in the rearguard circle have the same call as this unit, by the ability of your grade 3 or greater Rezael on the card name, soul boss won't stand in this unit. Okay, the biggest problem with a lot of multi-attack decks is that you have to boost with the back row at some point. So, you know, most of the time it's going to be your second attack, or depending on what deck it is, either going to be your first or second, which means one attack is either going to have drive check power, one won't. But point is, one won't have boosters, so it makes it easier for your opponent to guard. Reflective Dragon being able to stand itself, again, possibly being part of the soul problem, hence Blade Feather over here, makes it a little bit better of a grade 1 to be able to allow you to attack a little bit more consistently and pressure out your opponent. So I have it as a nice 2 for the aggressive because I like playing more aggressive decks. We will see that very true and true miracles. But again, if you want to run the more defensive and consistent option, you can definitely run Gabwelius because you might not see Reflective Dragon as much, or, you know, you have to basically put him on the side of your guards, and he does eat up souls, so take that as you will. Then we have 3 copies of Guron, grade 1 boost, Vita Shield, AK base, still satisfying to see this card in English. Continues to rearguard a guard circle. If your Vanguards are grade 3 or greater Rezael, this unit gets 5,000 power and 5,000 shield, active on both players' turns. So it's a 10k shield, 13k base, with second hit grade 3. All around, not bad. It's an extra card for guard power, which is really nice, and it has saved me in some few occasions. And on the of the fact there's a 13k booster or swinger, so worst case scenario, if there is not a unit in its column, you can just move it forward in 13k swing at the Vanguard. Persona Right, 23k swing. All around, Guron makes for very solid, I'm not going to say beat stick, but attack target, and also a really good guard power. And if you're me, the second you get the ability to attack, call down either 2 of these or 1 of it and 1 of this, and then you just blow your opponent down with a rear guard force of dogs and whatever is on your Vanguard circle between this and this. So all around, Guron makes for a very solid grade 1. I do like it a lot. Acts for early game aggro and late game defensive, so 3 of. Also, if your board got nuked, Guron again works for late game offensive as well because again, it's a 13k base. Moving on to 3 copies of Guron. So grade 1 boost, Vita Shield, AK base, continues rear guard circle. If this unit was placed by the ability of your Vanguard's divine skill this turn, this unit gets auto rear guard. At the end about this unit was boosted, or this unit boosted, not was boosted. Retire this unit to countercharge 1 and give it 5,000 power. All around pretty solid because the card you call does not have to be called by divine skill. It just has to be called by unit with divine skill. So Rezael over here, technically both Rezaels would proc this, being able to superior call something and then give this unit 5,000 power would be helpful. Actually, I don't know if this could technically call, because it does say it gets all the divine skill, but it doesn't technically have divine skill, so someone correct me on that. But either way, though, being able to be a 13k booster, as long as your Vanguard basically has the divine skill ability, and be a countercharger, this deck can run into a CB problem, though it's more likely to run into a soul problem, because you're not going to use your CB that much, depending on what you end up in your hand. But if you do end up running into a CB problem, you could use Guron to quickly fix it, and it'll make your job a little bit easier. And again, it's a nice early game rush target with Guron, because it can even be called by the ability, and it'll still be a 13k with a countercharge skill. So 3 copies of Guron. You know, we like to have the dogs here to combo off each other. Then we have 4 copies of Bringer Protection Keflon. Grade 1 boost is 0 souls, K base, continues Sentinel after 4 Sentinels in your deck. Auto put on guard circle, choose 1 units, it cannot be hit on the bottom if your hand has 2 more cards in it. Choose a card from hand, guard it, stand PG, nothing too special about it. Basically, that means if this and only one of the card is in your hand, place it on guard circle, you don't have to discard. It's great, because that means you can be as aggressive as in the early game. Take what I literally just said to heart, board rush your opponent, and then when they eventually counterattack you when you have little to no hand cards, throw down this PG, give them the middle finger, and you are good to go. All around, I like Bringer Protection Keflon a lot. It's really good for this deck's offensive half, especially because if you play like me, you'll probably go down to 5 hand cards at most throughout the rest of the game. Like, you will never peak past 5, which means you can guard 2 attacks and throw it on the PG, and you'll be good to go and not have to discard a card, and you can use that next card to either Persona Ride or lead into combos, or making Keflon a very solid PG to hack to support. You can run Paladinium Zoo Dragon or Aegis Matter Dragon. They'll have the exact same skill of Keflon. I choose to make it Keflon because he came out closer to the time of Rezael's release. Moving on to our last grade 1 in the deck, one of them in the ride deck, none in the main deck, sadly, of Patrol of Gus Venesta. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto and Rotopalm by Knight of Great Advance Ascendior, calls card to rearguard circle, and soul charge 1. And then change rearguard during turn if you have a grade 3 Great Vanguard Resident on the card and get plus 2 as power. Cool, if you went first, the turn you get to grade 3, this thing can hit into grade 2s because it'll be a 10k base. On top of that, it gets to call itself back from Ascendior, so again, if you went first, you can just grade 1 rush your opponent down, or if your opponent is already at grade 2, you can just call this card to back row, whether it's behind Vanguard or behind something else, and you can just have a constant booster from then on out. All around, Venesta makes for a solid grade 1 in the early game, and if it does get killed, well, you have a bunch of other recall targets, and if you don't have those recall targets and drops on, well, at least he's a 10k. So all around, Venesta is nice to have in the ride deck as a 1 of. Obviously, no copies of the main deck because we have a lot better grade 1s for that in terms of just power alone, but again, makes for a good job, so 1 of in the ride deck. And we have our grade 2s. 2 copies of, okay, I know the last card I said about this, I did get rid of, and it was so hard getting rid of Biscotti, love you queen, but this card I'm not getting rid of on my life, Heavenly Bright. Grade 2, Blitz Order. Play up Energy Blasting 2, check the top card, call it to guard circle, or put it to top. If you're me in the most recent match I've done this in, you put the top card on top, because the top card was this, and you can't place it on guard circle. If you called a card, that unit gets sent out as shield for the battle. Are pretty solid, because you either get an extra card to guard circle, which is going to at least be a 10k shield, if you do end up flipping over a grade 3, or, you know, if you end up seeing a trigger, you can just keep it on top, and then, you know, damage check it, and then you can just get the trigger effect from it, or use Rezael's ability, especially if you think the attack is going to go through anyways, whether because you don't have enough guard power, or it's the Vanguard attack, you feel like they're going to sack a trigger. On top of that, Heavenly Bright just works all around. It's just a good blitz order. It works for deck stacking. It only costs EB, and it only costs 2, so most of the time you're going to be able to use it in tandem with your other really good energy user, Nilberis over here. So I like having it at 2 copies. This blitz order has saved me a lot, and in my most famous game that was never recorded, Blagdemire versus Rezael, specifically the True Miracles version, this card is the reason I won that game. So 2 of Heavenly Bright, very solid blitz order. I like to have it in the deck at all times if I can. Moving on, we have 3 copies of Knight of Returning Spear, Ainos, so the guy that ended up taking Biscotti's spot. Lasai, grade 2 and set 5 Kishio, 10k base, auto rear guard. When your other unit is placed on the rear guard circle, this unit was on by the ability of a grade 3 get a Vanguard Rezael on the card name. This unit gets 10,000 power for the turn. Okay, so it's literally an Alden support card because something that's called Tava gets 10k. Again, it fixes the problem of like, you don't have to worry about boosting the first attack or second attack. You can just say, for example, Reflective Dragons in one column and this unit's in the other column. You can just swing with this thing with a boost and then call over, and then the unit called over will get 10,000 power. So at least you don't have to worry about that unit not being able to hit unless, you know, your opponent sees triggers. And Ainos is good, you know, it's an extra 10k, it's not bad, and the deck does see it enough to where you don't have to rely on it, especially if you don't end up hitting your other really important swingers, aka anything that is above the grade 2 line. But again, if you need the numbers, it's nice for pressure, so it's a good 3. Plus, if it does combo well with these 2, because, you know, it turns these both into 30ks without Persona Red, so there's that as well. And we have 4 copies of, straight up, one of the best grade 2s in my opinion, Knight of Gentle Beauty Nobia. Grade 2 and set 5 Kishio, 10k base. I love her wing design. Auto when placed on rearguard circle. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 good Rezael, regardless of when she's placed during main phase or battle phase, that is a very important distinction because that's what won me a game recently. CB1 check top 3. She's up to 1 card that's great thrust from a lump called to rearguard circle and bot deck the rest. If it's your battle phase, put the reveal card to hand instead of calling it. So if it's during your main phase, you can get rear guards. The most important part, you can call Nobia, use her skill, superior call another Nobia from the top 3, then use that one skill and basically keep going until you either run out of Nobias or until you run out of CB or until you run out of board space, whatever happens first. But on top of that, it allows you to possibly add something to hand during the battle phase. So you can add a PG. If you're in the situation I was one time, you could add a Rezael and then win the game because you saved a Persona Rai for the following turn where you might not have lived because it was when Blagdemire first came out. But again, trusting instincts. We'll go on to True Miracles with that when we get there. Either way though, again, being able to add anything to hand is great. And the reason why she won me a game is because she bought deck cards and then I was able to sack the over because of it. So I do owe Nobia that. And then auto rearguard when she attacks a grade 3 guard unit, whether it's a Vanguard or rearguard. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 guard Rezael, Soul Blast 1, she'll get 10,000 power for the battle. Alright, pretty solid. You know, she's a 20k swing once your Vanguard's a grade 3 guard and once your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 guard. Combines with Ainos 30k, Persona Rides 40k, plus Vita over here 45k. Alright, Nobia makes for a very good beat stick and a good search target and filter all around. So I like having her in this deck as a 4 she just does her job really well, and honestly, I can always fall back on Nobia to save the day. Then we have 4 copies of Knight of Bowstreaks Nilberis. Grade 2 and set 5 Kishio, 10k base. Auto when placed on rearguard circle by the your grade 3 guard Vanguard's ability. Doesn't matter what his name is, surprisingly. This unit gets 10,000 power for the turn. So you could use this on Leo if you wanted to, and I'm half tempted to. I'm not going to, but I could if I wanted to. Either way though, being a 20k superior call, or on superior call, is great. And again, combined with Vita, 25k, combined with Persona Rise, 35k, combined with Ainos over here, 45k for pretty much only 1 CB since you're calling it from Rezael. And then the second ability is auto rearguard. At the end of the battle, this unit attacked. If you have a grade 3 grade Vanguard Rezael on the card name, doesn't matter what grade the opponent's at, it doesn't matter what this attacked into. Energy Blast 3, shove to soul, draw a card, check the top card, and then put to top or bottom. All pretty solid because he helps increase your hand, helps increase your soul, and more importantly, he gets to stack your top card. So say, for example, you want to stack a trigger on top because you're already at 5 damage, and you want a damage check for, you know, your divine skill and guarantee that you live. Or say, for example, you do what Akina did in the most recent episode of the Vanguard anime. Sorry if it's spoilers, but this is technically coming out 2 days after, so it's not really spoilers anymore. You could then put that trigger on top and then use Heavenly, or the PG, use Heavenly Bright, and then Superior Call the PG, and then PG from that. Yes, PGs would proc from that skill because their ability procs from anywhere. All around, this is a very good card to have. Get you soul, get you deck stack, get you hand cards, and is literally a at least 25 to 35k booster, or not booster, swinger on call just by being superior callback abilities. Making Nilberis a very simple 4-up for me, especially because the only thing he eats into his terms of cost is energy, and because it's a free 3 energy every turn thanks to our energy generator, you're pretty much only going to be using them twice a turn. If you're using it 3 times a turn, you probably have nothing better in your hand, but hey, still very good grade 2 to have. Love having this guy around, 4 of. Then we have last grade 2 in the deck, one of in the right deck, none in the main deck of Knight of Great Advance and Senior. Grade 2 and set 5k shield, 10k base. Auto imported upon by a grade 3 card Rezael on the card name. Choose to 1 grade 2 card from your drop zone, call it to rear guard circle. Okay, pretty cool. You either call Ainos to get stacked. Okay, pretty much whatever you use as discard fodder throughout this game is you're going to superior call. And this is where you either call a Nobia in the early game, intercept with it, or you discard a Nobia, superior, or ride Rezael from ride deck, call Nobia out from drop zone, use Nobia's skill, and then start making a board because she works when she's placed from anywhere. All around, a Senior makes for a very solid grade 2. Sadly, he does not proc off Nobris effect because Nobris has to be placed by your grade 3 Greater Vanguard's ability, and while you would be yes at grade 3 at the time of a Senior's ability, a Senior is a grade 2, and that's what's ultimately superior calling Nobris. That interaction will not go off. All around, though, Senior works as a very solid grade 2 to have, so it's nice, one of in the right deck, none in the main deck. A lot of people use the Alden line, but as I kind of specified earlier with the starter, I like having the canonical ride lines, so for obvious reasons, I'm sticking with the canonical ride line, if that wasn't clear. Moving on to grade 3s, 2 copies of Blessed Dragon Gabwelius. So, this is Gabwelius, the form of the plushie, his real dragon form. Not gonna lie, I thought 2 copies was gonna be barely enough to see it. I really thought I would only get to see it once per game. And then the first game I played with this deck, and this game is on camera, I opened with both copies, without mulliganing. And then it happened again the following game. And then I drew one on my opening hand the third game, and then I drew the other one later on in the game. If you can't see my point, 2 copies is enough of this. Like, I've already proven that I can see this consistently at 2. So if you argue that I need more, I very much argue I don't. Grade 3 to drive person right, 13k base, auto placed on rear guard circle, soul boss 1, check the top card, put it top or bottom. If you put it on bottom, it gets 5,000 power for the turn. Okay, cool. It deck stacks, it's an 18k. I don't know why. I feel like it's very fitting because Akina used to run Pentagleam in his deck, confirmatively, and this card is basically Pentagleam, but it does cost a soul, but it does get 5k instead of 2k if you bot deck it, so all around making a very solid grade 3. And it was just placed from anywhere, so you know, you call it from Nobia to deck stack, call it from Rezael to deck stack, all around making itself pretty solid. And then auto rear guard, when this unit attacks in anything, if your damage has 4 more cards in it, turn of this battle gets an extra 5k, so you know the turn is placed, it's a 23k, plus probably Rezael Vita skills to 28k. And then this unit was placed on rear guard by the ability of Vanguard with the faded one in its card name this turn, and no drive checks are performed for the battle using rear guard attack this turn. Okay, and this is where the over would possibly screw you, though to be fair, it makes this ability not matter, so you don't have to CB for it, so take that as you will. It's counter boss 1, and this unit gets 10,000 power and -1 drive instead of 5k, and performs drive checks. So instead of getting this extra 5k, it gets 10, and it gets the ability to do drive checks. All around, Gabwelius is a very solid grade 3. It deck stacks for you on place. If you found a way to place it during your opponent's turn, you could deck stack that way. On attack, it's an 18k booster as long as you have 4 more damage. Like, nothing else is required for that. As long as you have the 4 more damage, an 18k swing. And not to mention that if you did superior call that turn by someone with a faded 1 name, doesn't have to have divine skill. So if, for example, Guron couldn't work with Vita just because Vita doesn't technically have a divine skill, then Gabwelius would be able to work with Vita because it has fade. Actually, it wouldn't work with Vita anyways because it has faded king in the card name. But you know what? Oh, yes, it was. It would work with it because it has considered faded 1. But again, being able to be an 18k swing and possibly a 28k swing or 23k swing with drive checks makes it a very powerful grade 3 that could possibly win you the game in a single move. So it's a nice choice, especially because, you know, again, he stacks on top card of your deck along with, you know, Nilberis over here who pretty much does it for the exact same cost. Actually, Nilberis procs into this because it gets you the soul for it. So yeah, take that as you will. Moving on to 4 copies of Faded King of Miracles Rezael Vita. You could put Rezael Vita in your ride deck. I wouldn't say in this specific build, don't do that, just because there's no real way to get this into soul during the main phase in this build. But in the other build, True Miracles, that is a different story. More on that in the True Miracles deck profile. If you can't tell, I'm more interested in the True Miracles deck profile in that one than this one because I really like the idea of the True Miracles deck profile. And if you know me and if you've been paying attention to the video, you already know what's involved in that deck. Either way, though, Veda King of Miracles, Rezael Vita, grade 3 to 9%, 30k base, love his wingspan. Oh yeah, one more thing I want to mention about Gabwelius. His flavor text is straight up what Ikina says. I would read the Japanese, but I'm gonna fail. But it's something like, Wazakuwa Hikari Demo Teonabashira Maidori Giseki no Maidori, something along those lines. I know I'm a little bit rough on the hiragana. I didn't take the time to read that. I'm literally going off the dome. But essentially, that's Akina's champ. Even though it's just a glimmer of hope, a miracle to send upon those reach out hand. Anyways, Rezael Vita. Here's Vanguard. This unit is also regarded as Fated 1 of Miracles Rezael, so they can persona right off each other if needed. During your turn, it also gets 5,000 power for each Fated 1 of Miracles Rezael in your soul and all their divine skills. So if you have 4 copies of this, it has 33,000 power, and it would gain the divine skill of each and every one of them. So if for some reason there were 4 different cards that counted themselves as Fated 1 of Miracles Rezael, and they all had the different divine skills, you could use one of their divine skills. Again, divine skills still only once per game, but still. And then Auto Vanguard, when this attacks into anything, or sorry, when it attacks into a Vanguard, CB1, choose up to 2 cards from your drop zone with different grades, and a total grade of less than or equal to the number of cards your damage zone call into rearguard circle. So if your damage zone is a 3 cards, then you can call a grade 3, a grade 0, a grade 2, and a grade 1, or a grade 1 and a grade 0, a grade 2 and a grade 0. You get the point. Like, point is, as long as the cards are different grades and add up to your damage zone or less, you're good to go. Then by putting a grade 3 graded card of Rezael's card name from your hand into your soul, whether it's Vita or OG, you can choose a grade 3 card from your drop zone, call it to rearguard circle, and your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 graded. All units called by this effect get 5,000 power for the turn. I wish he gave 5,000 to everyone, but hey, you know what? He already gets 5k for each Rezael and Soul, and you can pretty much stack that as much as you want if you play it right. But being able to superior call 3 units in one go and be able to give all of them 5k, because this part doesn't require the opponent to be a grade 3, only the 5k requires them. So being able to get an extra Soul card and being able to get 3 units out in one go is nice. You can get Gabwelius to, stack and get drive checks. Best part is it doesn't have to attack into a grade 3 FYI. So if you do manage to get to 4 damage before either side gets to grade 3, you could just, or before your opponent gets to grade 3, you could just do drive checks with him. You can get Nilberis out and make him a 20k. You can get Vanessa out for 10k, or your 13k bodies. Either way, though, Vita makes for a very solid grade 3, whether in terms of you're using his skill to get numbers from this effect, or just using his skill to get 3 rear guards, or even pumping him up with his own first skill, getting different persona rides off, getting more power to the Vanguard circle, and proccing off divine skills, making him solve 4 in the main deck. But again, if you want to run in the ride deck, go ahead and feel free to, because this version can't really do it, but the other version definitely can. Moving on to our last card in the deck, 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the red deck, a Fated 1 of Miracles, Rezael. Grade 3 to represent 13k base. I love his wings. I don't know why. I feel like they're really well done here. Like, they feel so realistic compared to everyone else's. Anyways, Auto Vanguard, when this unit attacks into a Vanguard, CB1, choose up to 2 cards from your drop zone with different grades from each other in a total grade less than equal to the number of cards your damage will call itself to rearguard circle. Literally the exact same skill verbatim here up until the then part. So again, if you have a grade 3 and a grade 0 in drop zone, you can call both of them, a grade 2 and a grade 1. If you have 3 damage, a grade 1 and a grade 0, a grade 2 and a grade 0, you get the point. And then the divine skill, the part that's new and the part that is required for this thing to be useful. Soul Boss 1, return all critical triggers from your drop zone to the deck and shuffle it. It gets a drive for the turn, and then until end of this fight, you, the player, cannot ride units without Rezael in the card names, and you get, when your damage check reveals a trigger unit other than a heal trigger, if your damage zone has 5 or more cards in it already, choose a card from your damage zone and heal it, and you lose this ability. So you can only use divine skill once per fight, but again, it's a simple Soul Boss 1, you send all of your crits back. This is where you you don't necessarily want to mulligan for these, but you can, if they end up in your opening hand until the end of the world, because you can use them as discard fodder, you can guard with them, and then once you hit grade 3, because it doesn't require the opponent to be at a specific grade, you Soul Boss 1, you shuffle back all your crits, and then this unit gets a drive for the turn, or this unit gets a drive for the turn if you end up using the divine skill on this unit. And then, you can end up having more crits in deck, and also the ability to damage check or turn every damage check trigger into a heal trigger once at your 6 damage. And yes, if you pull the over on this, technically speaking, you would heal once from the over, quote unquote, and then once from the actual ability. So keep that in mind when you're sacking triggers, and Rezael just makes a very good grade 3 because he can do 4 attacks and get a big column out of it, 5 attacks and make decently big columns. And again, he can give himself a drive, which doesn't sound like a lot, but on your final turn where you're doing triple drive and sending back a bunch of crits, yeah, that can definitely be helpful. Or again, it gives you that survivability where if you're at 5 damage and your opponent is about to kill you and you see that damage trigger, you can possibly hang on. So I like having him as a 3 of in the main deck here, 1 of in the ride deck. Again, there are different ways you could build this to end up running this one in the ride deck and be able to just consistently put this thing into soul during your main phase, so you can use Vita's ability, but we'll get to that in the deck profile I'm more excited about. Enough really do this for this one. I hope you all enjoyed. Okay, I really like this ending though. Like the other deck profile does not have this cool background because it's Vita here. Either way, that's it for this one. I hope all of you enjoyed. This deck is actually really fun to play. I know I kept mentioning True Miracles a lot, but that's because I really like how True Miracles is built, because it is built more to my style fully. But this deck still works really well. You have drive checking rear guards who proc regardless of what grade the opponent's Vanguard's at. You have 2 alternating grade 3s who can get really good numbers, and at least in this build, you can persona ride one of them off of each other because you might need to if you want good numbers, especially because sometimes it's not worth calling the 3 rear guards if only the rear guards are going to get the 5k and only those 3. If you need to persona right for bigger numbers, that's when you go into OG Rezael, and I actually did do that on camera. I forgot against what deck it was. It's probably Levy Dross. And again, we have really good consistent rear guards. We got Nilberis for stacking, we got Nobia for calling, we got Ainos here for numbers, this for possible standing or catalyst depending on your playstyle, and it early game rushes out the wazoo. Either way though, I like playing this deck a lot. I do think it's fun. I just happen to like True Miracles more, and if you excuse me, I think I'm actually going to go record True Miracles. So I'll see you all then. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join Twitch, and I'll see you all then. Don't forget to send up your Vanguards.